Hello, I'm Esther Gitu. It's Thursday, May 25th. This is Africa 54. The African Union marks Africa Day Thursday by promoting the African Continental Free Trade Area, an agreement by African leaders to boost the continent's economy. The UN estimates that more than 843,000 Sudanese have been displaced by the fighting and described conditions as dire. We'll have a report from Chad. And 4 teams faced off on Wednesday in the Basketball African League semi-finals at the BK Arena in Kigali in a race to reach the finals. We'll bring the highlights and a live report from Kigali. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. Thursday, May 25th is Africa Day. It is the annual commemoration of the founding of the Organization of African Unity on May 25th, 1963. On its 60th anniversary, African Union used the day to promote the African Continental Free Trade Area, an agreement by African leaders to boost the continent's economy and its growth. VOA's Mike Hovey has our report.
In 2018, 44 African nations signed onto the African Union-brokered African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, to strengthen trade in Africa and make the continent's economies more competitive. 10 more African nations have since become signatories, with only Eritrea absent. Achaleke Christian Leke, the AU Youth Ambassador for Peace to Central Africa, says the AFCFTA will help Africa capitalize on its raw materials, innovative products, and market to Africans.
And even in countries where they are a bit advanced, other African countries cannot benefit, from this. And I think that's why this glorious idea of the Africa Free Trade Zone is so important. It's so timely.
The Secretariat of the AFCFTA says Africa's population of about 1.3 billion people creates a $3.4 trillion free trade bloc. The Secretariat says the trade agreement could lift 30 million people out of extreme poverty and raise income levels to 450 billion by 2035. The AFCFTA aims to break down tariffs and other barriers that often make it cheaper and faster for African nations to trade outside the continent than with their neighbors. What's more, several experts warn the AFCFTA could fail if African leaders do not address underlying challenges such as rampant corruption and poor infrastructure. Tanatsiwa Dambuza, an advocate of the AFCFTA and the co-founder of Zimbabwe Institute of African Integration, says those problems hamper smaller and medium-sized businesses.
We also talk of corruption at the borders. The small and medium enterprises, the young people, the women also suffer because the police officers, sometimes they ask for bribes.
Even so, Gugulethu Siso, the founder of Chimeza, an African tech startup focused on providing credit to young entrepreneurs, says it's important that SMEs in Africa embrace the AFCFTA.
So imagine you as a youth in South Africa sitting and thinking that this thing is going to impact, it's not going to impact you, but you've got an e-commerce site, and in 2 years' time, someone like Jumia is suddenly going to be able to operate in your market with a free-for-all. How exactly do you protect your market share, right?
CISO challenges SMEs to financially and logistically prepare for the potential changes the agreement can bring to Africa. Mike Ove, VOA News, Washington.
South Africa on Thursday joined the rest of the continent in celebrating Africa Day. President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the main celebrations in Johannesburg. Tuso Kumalo reports from Johannesburg.
Under the theme deepening the African Union's vision for unity in Africa, this year's celebrations were held here at the Cracking for Humankind in Krugersdorp, west of Johannesburg. This is a place where historians found fossils that are believed to belong to the very first human beings that graced the planet Earth. Hundreds came here to listen to President Cyril Ramaphosa speaking. His message was that of unity and working together as Africans.
We need to be one. The only difference is the color. but all of us, we are human beings made by God. Therefore, we need to love, respect each other.
As young people, as teenagers, it's fun for us to participate in events like this because it reminds us more of how things were in the olden days. It makes us reconnect with our culture.
I think it is important for us as Africans to celebrate this day because it really means a lot to us. It reminds us of our great-great-grandparents that we do not know, and we are here to commemorate their life.
If we stick to our tradition, there was gonna be less of crime and any other bad stuff, even the sicknesses, because when I'm talking about the sicknesses as black people, we believe on African medicine, the roots, and everything that's gonna help people to stay healthy.
The celebrations are taking place at a time when anti-foreigner sentiments are growing in the country. A group of civil society organizations have organized a national shutdown on the 1st of June, titled South Africans Uniting Against Illegal Immigrants. Whether President Cyril Ramaphosa's message will resonate and be accepted by this group, only time will tell. Tuso Kumalo for VOA News in Johannesburg.
And to find out what people know and think about Africa Day, we spoke to some on the streets of Ghana, Nigeria, and Kenya. We seem to have audio problems right there, so we move on. Countries from around the world gathered at the United Nations to pledge $2.4 billion in humanitarian assistance for the Horn of Africa on Wednesday, a meeting called to address the threats faced by 43 million people in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia. So representatives from countries like Germany, Sweden, and Canada offering to increase donations from their original goals. According to the United Nations, crises brought on by drought, displacement, and food insecurity require at least $7 billion for the Horn of Africa region. Italy, Qatar, the United Kingdom, the United States summoned international representatives for the pledging event in collaboration with the three affected countries.
Crisis atop of crisis is threatening the lives and livelihoods of millions across the Horn of Africa. The longest drought on record, mass displacement after years of conflict and insecurity, skyrocketing food prices, and now chaos and fighting have engulfed Sudan, radiating instability across the entire region.
Today, I'm proud to announce that the United States will provide nearly $524 million in additional assistance to respond to dire humanitarian needs in the Horn of Africa. Today's announcement brings the total U.S. humanitarian assistance for response efforts to more than $1.4 billion in fiscal year 2023.
According to the World Health Organization and UNICEF, some 40,000 people died during a drought in Somalia in 2022, and half were children under the age of 5. Sporadic clashes between Sudan's army and paramilitary forces spilled over into Thursday, puncturing the relative calm in the capital Khartoum and raising the risk of a week-long truce deal is crumbling. World Food Programme Executive Director Cindy McCain said people were fleeing Khartoum and heading west towards Darfur. The fighting has worsened a humanitarian crisis and forced more than 1.3 million people to flee. Aid groups say the number of internally displaced is likely to become much higher. Henry Wilkins reports from Khartoum, Chad.
Rachid Khamis Abdallah escaped from Sudan hours before VOA interviewed him. He says he had been hiding from fighting inside the Sudanese town of Tendelti, just across the border from Chad, when armed men belonging to an ethnic Arab militia group broke into his home.
I was in town and I couldn't get away. The terrorists broke into my house and they took me away. They threatened to kill me. They are everywhere in Tendelti.
He says he was taken to a makeshift prison where he thought he would die, but an imam told the militia members to not kill him and instead release him across the border. Kaloun Adam says she fled Tendelti weeks ago, as soon as the fighting started, but has not heard from her son since.
The armed group destroyed everything. Houses and schools were destroyed, and there was no electricity. People ran away. I tried to find my son. We've been searching but didn't find anything.
Weeks later, he's still missing. Despite their horrific stories, Abdallah and Adam are among the lucky ones. They have escaped Sudan and the violence. Those still in the country face a less certain fate. The UN estimates that more than 843,000 have been internally displaced in Sudan, trying to escape fighting between warring sides that show little regard for civilian life. It expects the number of internally displaced people, or IDPs, to grow.
Which is where a lot of the fighting is happening, was estimated to be around 8 million people. That is the hotspot right now. And a lot of the people who are living in Khartoum are fleeing to neighboring states, such as Jazeera, White Nile, etc. And so that number is only expected to rise.
Humanitarian organisations say they've been struggling to get aid into Sudan to help IDPs, but some has begun to trickle in over the past 2 weeks. Aid groups and media lack access to Sudan, so the humanitarian situation for IDPs is unclear. VOA spoke with an IDP whose name we have withheld for her safety, who fled fighting in Khartoum for Port Sudan on the Red Sea coast. She says she had to leave her family behind in Khartoum.
This is the hardest decision I have ever had to make. Several reasons forced me to leave them, as my mom is sick and she can't travel for a long distance. I witnessed beatings, lootings, and shootings for the target civilians in their homes. And lately we started to hear cases of rape.
Victims and health workers have reported numerous cases of sexual violence against women still inside Sudan. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Kafrun, Chad.
In Washington, U.S. leaders are expressing optimism about reaching an agreement to lift the country's debt ceiling before the government runs out of money to pay its bills. Despite days of talks, though, Democrats and Republicans remain divided on future government spending. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy told reporters resolving the issue involves spending cuts.
First of all, let me tell the American public, I am not going to give up. We're not going to default. We're going to solve this problem. I will stay with it until we can get it done. But let's be honest about this. We have to spend less than we spent last year.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said Republicans are demanding extreme cuts and that a debt default is not an option.
A default would have catastrophic impacts in every single part of this country, whether you're in a red state or in a blue state. It doesn't matter. Every single part of the country. We're talking about millions of jobs lost, devastated retirement accounts, and a recession.
The U.S. Treasury has said it could run out of money to meet the government's obligations as early as June 1st. For more on U.S. debt ceiling and implications, I'm joined live via Skype from downtown Washington, D.C. by Paul Nantulia, a research specialist with the Africa Center for Strategic and International Studies. Paul, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much, Esther. It's, as usual, great to be back on your show.
Definitely. Now, Paul, just the thought that the United States could run out of money creates a lot of panic right here at home and abroad. Should we be concerned?
Yes, it's always a concern. This is the 78th time that you've had these negotiations and the prospect of a default. So yes, it is frightening. Potentially, Moody's Analytics tells us that $15 trillion, if there's a default, $15 trillion could be wiped out of household wealth. So it is frightening, especially coming out of COVID. Everybody was very nervous about a recession, and now that nervousness is now coming back into into play. So it's not a good thing at all.
So what happens then if they do not reach an agreement?
Well, basically, it could affect the U.S. Credit rating. The U.S. credit rating has always been very, very solid. That's the first thing. Secondly, it could potentially trigger a recession. That nobody wants to experience that. Thirdly, it could dampen confidence in the U.S. economy so soon after the COVID pandemic, which really damaged parts of the U.S. economy as well as the global economy. It's never a good thing if the U.S. cannot pay its bills. Okay, in 2011, everybody remembers, government workers were followed. When government workers are followed, that makes it difficult for the government to conduct business, such as issuing visas, processing asylum claims, processing social security. So yeah, it's a potentially frightening scenario.
You say it's frightening, but we have to work on the possibilities here. Now, what if the U.S. defaults on its debt? What impact would that have, say, on the African continent and the larger global economy?
My goodness, it would have an impact on the economy, on the global economy. First of all, U.S. Treasuries. U.S. Treasuries are basically the most valued asset internationally. Holding U.S. Treasuries is a sure way, that you're going to get your money back. And when that is affected, the global economy is affected. Now, for emerging economies, it's bad news because in case there's a default, what's going to happen is households and consumers inside the United States are not going to have the money to purchase imports from Africa. That's a very bad thing. It's also very bad for the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, which allows African countries duty-free access to the U.S. economy in terms of textiles. Suddenly, you're going to find that you're not going to be able to find purchasers, right, that will be able to take these imports. So that will have a damaging effect on African economies. African economies depend very, very heavily on exports, and the U.S. is a very attractive market for that.
Quickly, Paul, what comes to mind? We saw African countries come to ask the IMF to restructure their debts, forgive their debts. Which are the hardest hit countries? Maybe 3 in Africa?
Well, you're talking Zambia right now. You're talking potentially Kenya. You're talking Ghana, and you're talking Ethiopia. These are some of the highly indebted countries, that have been trying to negotiate debt restructuring, right, with their creditors, including China. These are some of the countries that are in trouble. Potentially the Democratic Republic of Congo as well, right? Things have not been going well for that country, despite the fact that it has all these commodities that the rest of the world needs. Now, if there is a problem in the U.S. economy, those countries that I've just mentioned, including other countries that are kind of approaching debt distress, become even more complicated, right? Becomes more complicated. So everybody in Africa is hoping that a solution is found and found very quickly before the 1st of June.
Thank you so much, Paul.
You're very welcome.
Paul Nantulia is a research specialist with the Africa Center for Strategic and International Studies. We'll be right back.
What impact do beauty pageants and titles have in advocating for social, economic issues in our societies? And although the global standards of beauty have recently become more inclusive to embrace African culture, on this week's episode of Our Voices, we'll speak to some beauty queens and examine how pageantry platforms in Africa and in the diaspora are being used to bring positive change.
Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
Kigali, we are here for the BAL finals. For the best of African basketball. The Sahara and Nile Conference delivered their verdict. The top 8 teams on the continent are chasing the Holy Grail. Who will be the next BAL champion? It's game time.
Game time is coming shortly from Kigali. But first, at least 17 people have died in a cholera outbreak in the Hammanskraal township outside South Africa's capital, Pretoria, according to authorities. Health authorities are yet to confirm the exact source of the outbreak, but poor wastewater management and local government instability in South Africa's capital city have been blamed for the situation. A Tunisian appeals court on Wednesday released media owner Nuruddin Boutar on bail, according to his Musk FM radio station. This comes months after his arrest alongside prominent critics of President Kais Saied. According to the Journalists Union, the arrest was based on opposing the Tunisian president. The Democratic Republic of Congo on Tuesday made another formal referral to the International Criminal Court to ensure the court will focus on what it calls the systematic pillaging of its natural resources in its eastern region. The referral's goal would be to investigate and prosecute any person involved in human rights violations between 2022 and 2023. 4 teams faced off on Wednesday in the Basketball Africa League semi-finals at the BK Arena in Kigali in a race to reach the finals. Angola's Petro de Luanda went up against Senegal's Asdouane, and Egypt's Al Ahly took on Stade Malien. The action so far is by checking out some of the highlights from these games. We have VOA's Jackson Bunganyi with more.
AS Douane was leading by 8 in the second quarter when Petros Diabate passes to Pedro, who finds Goncalves for a 3. But it was a close one in the third, with Petro up by 1 when Senegal's Crawford tries for a 3 and misses. But Manning gets the rebound, spins around and gets it in. Come fourth quarter, Senegal goes on a run with a 9-point lead as Ndu passes to Manning, who finds Boise and extends his team's lead. Boise at it again with another 3-pointer. Down by 14 with 6 minutes to go, Angola tries to get some points up when Goncalves finds Pedro for a one-handed dunk. 20 seconds left in the game and Angola down by 6. Marias finds Hollis for 2, making it a close game. But it was AS Douane who came out on top, 92-86, and is headed to their first BAL finals. A close game for the second matchup started off with a few lead changes. Stade Malien up by 2 in the second quarter when Alalis Yendi loses the ball and Keita picks it up and passes to Berthe for a dunk. Egypt down by 3 in the third when Zahran finds Amin, who makes a 3 from downtown to tie the game. Mali up by 3 again when Berthe gets close to the basket, but a huge block by Orabi, who was in the right place at the right time to keep Mali from extending their lead. Mali down by 4 points with 6 minutes to go and Keita to Berthe with a turnaround jumper that's good, making it a 2-point game. 16 seconds left to finish. Egypt up by just 3 when Berthe tries to make a pass, but Sami makes a steal and finds Amin for 2 more. But Al Ahly triumphs over Stade Malien with a final score of 78-73, which means Egypt versus Senegal for the championship this Saturday.
Now for the very latest from BL, let's go live to Kigali, Rwanda, where VOA Sports reporter Chuck Tierro is standing by. Hello, Chuck. Give us the very hottest from the arena. What do you have today?
Hello, Esther. It's been a great day for Basketball Africa League again, Kigali Arena. Like Jackson just outlined whatever happened in the games in here. The tensions we had, it was about. It's a lot of surprising for the fans. Everybody thought Petro was going to win this game big, but as you see, the one from Senegal came well prepared, and they really outcome for something. They really come with something that really put them in a bad position defensively because their bigs are more bigger than the Senegalese players. But we saw that the coaching played a big role on this also, Esther. When the Senegalese people lose the first 2 games of this conference and they make some change on their roster, and they never lose until now. So everybody was expecting Petro, who's been winning every game from this season, to win this game. But that was the biggest upset of the tournament, and they are qualified in the final. And we go to Stade Malien, and if Stade Malien Al Ali was playing really slow, and everybody thought they were scared to play because this Stade Malien team was really fast. Al Ali played their pace, and they was able to win it, and when they needed. And Stade Malien did a lot of mistakes on the fourth quarter, but authentically in the gym, Esther, everybody was chanting for Stade Malien. Everybody thought the Stade Malien team was supposed to win this game of the semifinal. Now, unfortunately, both two teams are out, Stade Malien and Rwanda.
Hey, Chuck, so what do the preparations for the finals look like?
But the preparation right now, Esther, the teams are practicing right now. It's going to be a big finals because this is IS1 first time on the final, of course. And they're going to be playing Al Ali, who Egypt, Al Zamalek been on the final before, which really show that Egypt has been a big team in this. Both teams practice today, and they're going to practice tomorrow, and they're looking to film right now and see who's going to do what on Saturday for the final championship of this tournament. But we see that the third place will be playing on Friday between Stade Malien of Mali and Petro de Rwanda will battle for the third place of this tournament, Esther.
Hey, who is predicted, Chuck, to take the trophy home after the finals are done?
That's a good question, Esther. There's been a lot of surprises, but everybody think if you look at the fan, they think the favorites are the Al Ali team. But unfortunately, we see if Al Ali will win or AS1, because AS1 this is their first time in there, and people are expecting them to come out with something because they really deserve it. They really lost the first two games and just turned everything out. It will be very hard to predict who's going to win because it's going to come out to the coaching staff in here.
Thank you so much, Chuck. VOA Sports reporter Chuck Tierro live for us from Kigali, Rwanda. Legendary singer Tina Turner has died at the age of 83 after a long illness. Turner sold more than 150 million records worldwide and won 12 Grammy Awards on her way to being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Her list of hits includes Proud Mary, River Deep, Mountain High, and What's Love Got to Do with It. Turner was also forthcoming about the abusive relationship with her ex-husband and one-time musical partner, Ike. U.S. President Joe Biden said in a statement that in addition to being a once-in-a-generation talent who changed American music, Turner's personal strength was remarkable. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.